Welcome to ACC Nation. That is Will Ojanen, and I'm Jim Quist. Oopsies, more college football top 25 upsets, and wow, I cannot believe it was that close. Games coming right up. Then we take a look at the race to Charlotte, which teams definitively said, hey, we're coming for the ACC championship game. Who can stop us? We'll find out. A Reese Davis of ESPN's College Game Day is just totally beyond wrong. We'll get into that in just a minute. First, here's a look at how the top ACC fall sports teams are ranked going into the weekend, at least. We'll find out how they come out the other side in all the polls this week at accnation.net. Women's soccer, 1, 2, 3, Florida State, Virginia, North Carolina, topping the poll this past week. We'll see how they do coming into this week. In men's soccer at number 5, hey, the Hokies at number 5. In field hockey at 4, it's Louisville. In women's cross country, NC State, the Pack, number 1. And in men's competition, Notre Dame is number 2. Will that change after this weekend? And in volleyball, here's a real race going on between Louisville and Pitt. And this is fun to watch. Louisville now at number 2, Pitt number 4. We'll see if any of that changes. There's some exciting games coming up in the weeks to come before we get to the very end of the season. We'll see who comes out on top in the volleyball race in the ACC. So, time for top 25. Oopsies. Let's start out with Purdue thumping number 2 Iowa. Wow, 24-7. I have to say this. My niece goes to Purdue. She is a doctor to be. And so every once in a while we'll share a text, just something real simple. It's like, when they were playing Notre Dame, it would be like, go Purdue or something like that. And so, it's real simple. I said a thing in caps, Purdue, with about 3 exclamation points, and she was just ecstatic that they had won. So Purdue thumping number 2 Iowa 24-7. Will, let's get a little deeper into this game, because now I didn't get to watch any of it. I saw some highlights, but this is a question that comes out of this with number 2 Iowa falling. Could they have punched the ticket for the return of Alabama into the top 4 and maybe even getting into the playoffs? Or is there somebody else waiting in the wings to leapfrog?
I think just based on where things stand, probably brought Alabama back in, but we knew they were going to be back in. I mean, they're still the most talented team in the country, but Iowa was just getting by with a lot of dumb luck. I mean, the amount of luck they were getting was just insane. This was like 2017 Miami level of luck, but it finally just came crashing down to them against Purdue on Saturday in a hard way. And they were never really competitive in that game. And it's just, it's a huge win for Jeff Braun, because his SEAL region has been on the warmer side, because they've pretty much ever since the last couple of seasons, they just haven't been up to snuff, and they needed a big win. And Iowa's pretty much, I think, lost their chance to go into the playoff when you lose by that much at home to that team. That's not a good thing. But yes, I think Alabama's probably worked their way back into the playoff discussion after that.
Do you mean to say wormed their way back in?
Slither, slither, worm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of people at Ohio State, Penn State, and maybe even Michigan who are sitting there going, yo, what about us? And Michigan has an unblemished record. So maybe they have an argument. Maybe not. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what this is recorded on a Sunday morning. So we have yet to see the final analysis of either the AP or the USA Today coaches poll. So we don't know just yet.
Right.
It'll be fun to watch what happens here. Either way, there's going to be a lot of screaming, yelling, kicking. Either side doesn't make any difference. There'll just be a lot of craziness, which is that's good. And as our colleague Mike Lewis says, none of it really matters because that CFP poll comes out in a couple of weeks, and that's the one that really matters. So,
Yep.
All right. Next, Auburn crunched number 17 Arkansas 38-23. Wow.
Yeah, surprise. I mean, you when you allow Bo Nix to go for almost 300 yards on you, then that's a problem. I mean, we know Arkansas came out of the gates real hot. Obviously, they destroyed Texas, and that win isn't looking quite as good now. But Auburn hasn't been great to start the season, but maybe when the new coach is got a little something in, put a little something in Bo Nix to make him better, because he's actually played better the last couple of weeks. Now, is it sustainable? We'll find out. But again, big win for Auburn.
Here's the one thing I want to say that I think applies to football teams across the board this season. Everybody started out kind of rocky, pretty much. I mean, and we've seen some teams falter along the way that we wouldn't have imagined. But we're also seeing the emergence of teams and players who are getting better with a couple of weeks under their belt and more experience, and everybody starting to click on the line, et cetera, et cetera. We're starting to see some exciting football here. Next, I'm going to quote from a very famous movie, and we'll see whether or not Will remembers which one this is. Did you say Utes? Oh, yeah. The two Utes over there.
I don't know if I remember that one.
Yeah, well, without the proper accent, it probably wouldn't work out. Yeah, Herman Munster, Fred Gwynn, is the judge. And he looks over at my cousin Vinny and says, "Did you say Utes?"
Yeah, my wife was watching that movie last night. How did I not?
You totally missed it. Utah takes down number 18, Arizona State. That was a real stretch anyway. 35-21. Wow. Okay. All right. We'll just move on here.
I'll just say real quick, this has been kind of Arizona State's MO. They've been up and down and up and down. I think they came back into the polls a couple of weeks ago, and yeah, I guess just that's kind of the state of the Pac-12 right now. It's kind of similar to the ACC. Like, there really isn't an elite team that's going to carry the pull. I mean, Oregon's probably is the best team, but they, as we've seen, they can be beaten.
Yeah, that's just true. Next, Baylor just absolutely ruins BYU's day. Baylor unranked 38, number 19 BYU 24.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like Baylor has really flown under the radar. Dave Aranda took over that team last year, and they were just flat out brutal. I can't remember how many games they won, but they didn't win very many, and they're one of the last undefeated teams now. And it's because they have something in their offense, and we saw that yesterday. So, again, big credit to Dave Aranda. I think Baylor will absolutely be ranked in these upcoming polls.
Now, I know this made our colleague Chris Bond absolutely ecstatic. Ed Ogeron's family probably is breathing instead of holding their breath. LSU absolutely took it to number 20 Florida here. Didn't end up with a big spread. This is there's a lot of LSU grads in on my wife's side of the family. She's the only smart one that went to an ACC school. So I hope they're not listening. I'll never make it through Thanksgiving if they are. 49-42. My wife observed a score that high. There's no defense in either one of these teams.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the SEC, so it's a good football. There is no such thing as bad football in the SEC. Exactly. But really, well, we can disagree with that all day long. But the story of this game was Tyrion Davis Price of LSU running for 287 yards against Florida, and see, Florida isn't even quite as good as it has been in past years either. But if you follow college football, Ed Orgeron is on one of the hottest seats in the country, and a win like this definitely saves his job, at least for another week.
I'm not. I'm just not on board this whole let's get rid of Ed thing. Uh, I actually think he's a good coach. He's a good fit for LSU. And I think that people are just so impatient. They want things to happen within a set amount of time. And it just doesn't work that way anymore. You know, the transfer portal, people playing 5 and 6 years, et cetera. It's just things have changed. And instead of the typical 3 years to turn something around, if you don't have COVID thrown in for good measure for a year and a half or two, it just doesn't apply. I think that Ed should stick around for at least another year, maybe 2.
But then again, I guess you could counter that and say, okay, look what won him that national championship. One of the best college quarterbacks, we've seen in quite some time, even if on one year, and Joe Burrow. His offensive coordinator is now, was a big reason that now he's in the NFL as an offensive coordinator. And ever since then.
That's right. But give him a year, turn it around.
And he has made staff changes after last year, and it really hasn't looked so. I guess I can understand. I can see it from both sides. Let's just put it that way.
Okay. All right. Let's look at the games that were wow. These were a little closer than they should have been. Number 10, Michigan State just gets by Indiana 20-15. That was an interesting game. I thought for sure Indiana was going to pull off the upset there.
Yeah, and Indiana is still despite this season, that's still a tough place to play, and you got to give them credit because they did stop Ronnie Walker. He only averaged 3.7 yards per carry in that game, and when that offense kind of runs through him, and if you can contain him at somewhat, you definitely have a chance to win the game. But say the Indiana offense has kind of struggled. I mean, their quarterback threw 2 picks yesterday. They didn't really have a lot of success on the ground either. So credit to Michigan State, who along with teams like Baylor have been one of the biggest, surprises in college football this year.
Number 13, Ole Miss inches by Tennessee 31-26.
A great effort by Tennessee, but their offense has been really good. I know Hendon Hooker got hurt in this game, and they had to go to Joe Milton. And I guess you could say in the end they just couldn't cut the mustard.
Okay. Now,
right, hold on. I need to slap my knee for that.
That's I'm see now on the other side of my family, there is actually somebody who is a big Tennessee fan. And I always have a great conversation with her every time we meet up. I'm going to use that line. And the following week, we'll see whether or not I have any bandages on my face.
Yeah, you're gonna come to the next recording, and you're just gonna look like a mummy up top.
I'm gonna look like the Weekend. That's what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. All right. Number 24, San Diego State 19. And I hate to do this, but being the punster, San Jose State 19-13. Mm-hmm. I know it was a bad one. It was really a stretch. But we're at the tail end of these, so why not? Close game. And again, I think, with the team that's at number 24.
Yeah, I know. And even though San Jose State, remember last year, they were one of the darlings of college football. They've taken a step back this year. They're now 3-4, but San Diego State, another team that's undefeated. They're 6-0 after the game, bowl eligible. Another good job by the Aztecs. They've been, consistently one of the better teams out west for a little while now, and they're obviously going to make a little bit of a climb in these upcoming rankings too.
It should bump up about 3 spots, I'd say. Maybe. Yeah, we'll see. If they get into the above 20, I'd be surprised. But if they do,
I would say like 21, 22. Yeah, I think you're right.
But if they do, it's mainly because of all the other stuff that's going on above them. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people who have just absolutely gotten bumped because they lost or somebody else won or whatever. A lot of changes coming up. I'll be interested to see what the polls look like this week. All right, that's a look at all the fun and frivolity of the top 25. Whew. If anybody, absolutely anybody, thinks college football isn't exciting, you're out of your mind. You're in a coma. You're part of the matrix and they're feeding you a lie. Something. I don't know. Let me see the back of your head, Will.
You don't want to say that.
I'm going. No. All right. This comment, I think, was taken a little bit out of context, but nonetheless, it still needs to be addressed because this is what ESPN threw out there in regard to promoting the comments of their crew on ESPN's College Game Day. Reese Davis, this is the comment at the very end of it, and they use it as the headline. The ACC conference is not delivering. Reese. Now, to give it a little more context, these guys, I swear, they are like 2 or 3 weeks behind reality at times, not all the time. But in rewatching that, I was thinking to myself, all they're talking about here is the fact that Clemson isn't at the top of the conference. So it's like, who's at the top? Well, there's nobody ranked, nobody. And that's what I got from that comment. It was like, really? Are you even watching any ACC games? Really? I mean, seriously, are you putting in the time to really analyze what's going on and then start comparing some of the teams in the ACC who are winning, who are moving up against other teams that are in the top 25? And again, going back to what Mike Lewis said, top 25 don't mean diddly squid until we get into November and we talk about the CFP top 25. Then we start getting into something that really makes a difference. So, Reese, you're wrong. And after this weekend's football, we have a much clearer picture, and there will be teams to make you happy. They'll be moving up in the top 25 a little further, and then you don't have to whine and moan like a lot of other people who don't pay attention, who ought to be, who are getting paid nice money to sit there and pontificate. Whereas I'm not being paid nice money to pontificate. I'm just pontificating. Mm-hmm. All right. Let's talk about what happened this week in ACC football. On Friday, it was Clemson over Syracuse. The final score 17-14. This game was much closer than I would have ever thought. And we definitely need to take Dino Babers to task over game management.
Well, we 100% do, and I'm going to get to that in a moment. But it still amazes me that Vegas still hasn't caught up to the fact that Clemson has like no offense whatsoever. And how many weeks in a row have they been double-digit favorites, and they haven't even come close to covering? I wish I would have looked it up before we started to see what Clemson is against the spread this year, but I can't imagine it's a very, very nice number.
Ugly.
Once again, this offense is just struggling. And I even mentioned this. I was talking about it Friday night with our friend Jeff over at All Sports Discussion. I'm like, the reason Clemson's offense is struggling is because what Clemson wants to do and what DJ Uyunglele can do are two totally different things.
Yeah.
He's not super athletic where he can just run all these QB keepers and whatnot. And Kobe Pace had a good game. He had like 76 yards rushing or something. Like he averaged over 4 yards a carry. He had a good game. But when they realize, okay, DJ isn't that great a runner and they need to go to something of a more traditional offense, give the running back more than, maybe 20 to 25 touches a game. Doesn't have to be all carries, but, give him a few catches here. But they need to, take a little bit off of DJ's plate and in that sense. And the fact that Tony Elliott hasn't made that adjustment more than halfway into the season, just it's baffling to me that they can't see that. Now, to your thought or your point about game management, yeah, that loss is totally on Dino Babers. Um, so if you didn't get to see the game, we'll recap the situation real quick. 4th and 1, under a minute left. I know Syracuse was out of timeouts, I believe, and then I think they're at the Clemson 31. And let's keep in mind, Sean Tucker had 22 carries, 157 yards in this game. 7 yards per carry was like the only thing they could get done. He was the only player doing anything against this Clemson defense. And what does he do? Instead of going for and running Tucker, he goes for a 48-yard field goal to try to tie it, and he misses. In a game where, yeah, I know who knows what would have happened in overtime, but Clemson has shown no reason to believe that they can score, and you could have easily gone for it on 4th and 1, got the first down, and gone for the win, or at worst, a much more manageable field goal.
Oh yeah,
and he made a terrible decision.
Yeah, I mean, it was just obvious across the board. And look, I venture to say anybody who's reasonable out there is going, well, look, I'm not a college football coach. Maybe I don't understand all of the things that were going on, et cetera, et cetera. I think that applies across the board to fans, people in media, et cetera. But gosh, that was one that slapped you right in the face. It's like somebody taking a big old sea bass or a flounder and just whacking you across the head. It was like, What are you doing? What are you have been successful so far with this. Make it happen. You know how to kill the clock if you have to.
Right. And the go back to Clemson for a moment. Kobe Pace had 76 yards on 14 carries, while DJ had 11 carries. And granted, 2 of those count as sacks, but still, with the way he's running, he should not be carrying the ball 9 times in a game. He just can't do it. And they need to give some of those carries to Pace or their backup running back. I'm Mafa, I think is his last name.
At this point of the season, you should be if you're not pulling off anything better than this, you need to start giving your up and comers, like Virginia did against Duke, give the people who are going to be playing the game next year that need experience, get them in the game. I mean, sure, you might lose that one, but and I know, look, hey, maybe I'm wrong on that, and I probably am, but I know that they're still holding on to the hope that things are going to turn around and they'll get to where they need to go. But still, taking some of your up and comers and putting them in and running them and giving them an opportunity is critical to building programs. Now, I'm certainly not going to challenge what they do at Clemson at all from that standpoint, but
right.
I think your point about Elliott not making adjustments is spot on, and it needs to be done. I'm not sure that we're at the halfway, better than halfway mark, and it's going to be a struggle for Clemson to win some games from here on out, and I'm not really sure they're going to. I just think at some point you just have to say, look, we've got to do this. We've got to make changes now.
Yeah, and you look at the rest of Clemson's schedule real quick. At Pitt is going to be an interesting game.
Yeah.
I'll talk more about Pitt when we get to them in a little bit, but Florida State at home is a much tougher game than it was 3 weeks ago. Yep. At Louisville will be a game. Well, UConn, they're good. They're going to smoke them. Wake Forest is a tough game. At South Carolina, that should be winnable. So it's not like we're talking about them in a sense that they're not going to they're going to finish like 7-5, 8-4. They could still finish with 9 wins in this season, but it's just not going to look pretty.
Right. Yep. You're right. All right. Let's get in Saturday's games. We talked about this just for a moment. Virginia over Duke, 48-zip. There's some highlights to talk about. Go ahead.
Yeah. So it really says something when Brendan Armstrong had an off game yesterday. I mean, if you watch the game, I didn't get to watch a lot of it. Unfortunately, my profession sometimes requires me to work on Saturdays, so I didn't get to see the game. I have it recorded. I'm planning to watch it back either later today or tomorrow. But from what I gathered, he was off yesterday, but still threw for 364 yards. Just really shows just how good this Virginia offense is, and it's just this wide receiver core is just so good. I mean, Dontavian Wicks, 7 catches, 125 yards in this game, caught a nice touchdown. Billy Kemp had 6 catches. Jelani Woods had 5. He also had a touchdown. And the thing is, they ran the ball, fairly well in this game and had 164 yards and averaging 5 yards per carry. No, they didn't have Mike Collins in this game. He was out with an injury, so they brought in David Darrington, who's a grad transfer from Harvard. He had 60 yards in this game, including a 34-yarder, which you don't see a whole lot. Another thing I saw was Brendan Armstrong looked healthier. He ran some in this game. 34 yards rushing. What we talked about, seeing the future. At the end of the game, Virginia brought in Jay Woolfolk, who is a true freshman, and he ran the ball really, really well, and he is super fast. I'm curious to see if it's going to be him as the quarterback of the future. I'm really curious to see what Robert and I can do with him in this offense, because he is fast.
Yeah.
But let me just say something real quick on Duke for a moment. Yeah, Mateo Durant, again, 82 yards on the ground on 17 carries, and he had some nice carries, a couple nice carries this game, but Virginia really held him in check. This is one of the more impressive defensive efforts I've seen in Virginia, definitely all season. And Durant also looked like a guy who's coming off a game where he had 43 carries. But we've talked about it. You just got to wonder, is this the end for David Cutcliffe? Is it just doesn't seem like they have a whole lot going there.
Yeah. All right, next game, Pitt over Virginia Tech. Final there, 28-7. Started out okay, and then it just rapidly went downhill for the Hokies.
Yeah, I would classify that offensive effort as pathetic, and they could not get anything going. I think they got their only touchdown on the first drive of the third quarter or something like that, but just could not get anything going. 224 total yards for Virginia Tech in this game. They just could, like I say, Burmeister could not get anything going. They couldn't run the ball much. But speaking of running the ball, man, Pitt ran for 208 yards in this game. Israel Abanikanda, 140 yards on the ground, best game of his early career. Kenny Pickett only threw for 203 yards because they didn't really need him to throw. But what I was going to say is I want to take a look and see the ranks in terms of offense of the teams Pitt has played, because it feels like they really have not played many good offenses this year. And I feel like the best ones they've struggled with, i.e. Tennessee and Western Michigan. Well, I mean, UMass is not a very good team. They're one of the worst teams in all of college football. Okay, New Hampshire, that's an FCS team. They should be doing that. Georgia Tech's not a good offense either right now. Because Jeff Sims turns the ball over on every other play, and Virginia Tech just has an awful offense too. So I'm curious. I mean, they're going to face Clemson, who doesn't have a very good offense. Miami doesn't have a very good offense. Duke doesn't have a very good offense. Carolina does. Carolina has good offense. Virginia has a really good offense. Syracuse can run the ball. I'd be curious to see if they can stop it, because that's a team. Yeah, they do sack the quarterback, those Pitt, but can they stop the run? I gotta punch the numbers, because those are some intriguing matchups at the end of the season. And I guess this is kind of the reason I'm hesitant on Pitt still, because I feel like their schedule is not conducive to facing very, very many good offensive teams.
This is why we collectively had an article at accnation.net talking about Pat Dangerfield Narduzzi.
I don't get no respect.
That's right. That was spot on. And this is the thing. There's so many question marks, and you point them out. It's like, okay, all right. Well, this was a game I think that definitely showed that there was improvement. But the teams that you put the spotlight on there, Will, are going to present a challenge, and we'll see just how Pitt responds to those challenges, whether or not they continue to grow and develop and things are clicking for them. Earlier we talked about there's no defense in games where the scores are high. Well, this was an example. UNC 45, Miami 42. Miami was very close to absolutely ruining this experience for Mac Brown and his team.
They definitely were. I mean, if you didn't get to see the game, Carolina or Miami was going down for the winning score, and Tyler Van Dyke threw a pick in the red zone at the end of the game that would have won the game for the Hurricanes. And he's a true freshman. He's still trying to figure things. I think he's a redshirt freshman, excuse me. But 20 of 45 passing in this game through 3 picks. They did have a lot of success on the ground. Jalen Knighton had 92 yards on the ground and another 73 receiving. So he had over 160 total yards in this game and had 3 touchdowns. So he was the star of this game. Remember, he just came off a suspension. His first game was the Virginia game, and he looked a little rusty in that, to be honest with you. Sam Howell only threw for 154 yards in this game, and a lot of that's because they just ran the ball so well. Ty Chandler had 104 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. Howell himself ran for 98 and 2 touchdowns. Josh Downs continues to be a freaking stud, 11 catches in this game. But yeah, this is something there's like a real chance. This game preseason was like, okay, this is the Coastal Division like championship right here. The winner of this game probably wins the Coastal. Now we're looking at it as there's a real chance neither of these teams make a bowl this season. And I talked about it in our little message thread before we started. I'm going to read off Carolina's schedule. Okay. They're 4-3 at Notre Dame next, Wake Forest at home, at Pitt, Wofford, and at NC State. So 3 of their final 5 games are against ranked teams. And they also have 3 road games in that schedule, in that schedule. Yeah, they're probably going to beat Wofford. So I'll get them to 5 wins.
That's it.
But yeah, I don't know if they're beating Notre Dame. I don't know if they can beat Wake in the non-conference game at home. I don't know if they can go to Pitt to win. And State is looking like one of the best teams in the ACC right now. They're no worse than the second best team in the ACC, in my opinion, in NC State. But we'll get more to them in a minute. But yeah, there's a real chance they could miss out on a bowl after being a preseason top 10 team in the eyes of some. And we look at Miami right now, 0-2 in the league. They have to travel to NC State. They host NC State, at Pitt, Georgia Tech, Florida State, Virginia Tech, Duke. They need 4 more wins. I don't see 4 more wins in there. They could probably beat Georgia Tech. At Florida State has gotten a lot tougher the last couple of weeks.
Yep.
And they look like a team that's found something. Virginia Tech, who knows what that team? That's the next to last game of the season. Who knows what Virginia Tech is going to be by then? So yeah, there's a real chance both of these teams could miss a bowl.
Wow, and what a turnaround, right?
Yeah.
From how it all started. Amazing. Yep. Just amazing. Mm-hmm. Last game of the day on Saturday, the evening game. This matchup was, I think, in a lot of people's minds, I know in mine, I can't speak for you, but I thought it was going to be a lot closer. I know one of our other colleagues was really struggling with picking. Jim Bresnahan was saying, hey, between NC State and BC, I'm not really sure who to pick here. And that was my feeling. I was sort of like, it's a home game. NC State absolutely took it to Boston College, shut them down in the second half, 33-7, the final score.
Yeah. This was a tough game to predict. I mean, yeah, I know, Dennis Grosel is, has played, has done all right, and they've really relied on their running game. But this game was a tough one because you figure Boston College has played very well. So is NC State. This game is in Chestnut Hill, but this is all credit to NC State's defense. I mean, they really took over the game in the second half. State outscored BC 23-0 in the second half. It kind of really all started really towards the end of the first half, and BC missed a field goal. Then they went to punt on I think it was on their first drive of the second half, but the punter dropped the snap, or he fumbled the snap, and State picked it up and went for a touchdown. Then on the ensuing drive, um, Grosel had Zay Flowers open for what would have been a touchdown, but he overthrew him, and then ended up being I think they ended up punting or something like that, or he threw an interception either on that drive or the following drive. I can't remember which, and it blew the game open right there. But again, credit to NC State's defense; they were outstanding in this game. Held BC to 291 yards on the ground. Not a great offensive effort. They only averaged 3.8 yards per carry on the ground, but that they didn't really need the rushing attack to do much. Devin Leary threw 3 touchdown passes in this game, 251 yards, a pretty efficient effort from him. But like I said, NC State's probably the second best team in the ACC right now, and I don't really think it's debatable. It's either Wake and NC State right now are the two best teams in the league.
Amazing. The Atlantic Division, here's how it all stands right at this moment. Wake Forest, 4 wins in the conference, 6-0 overall. They are bowl bound. NC State moves up to 2-0 in the conference. They're 5-1 overall. Clemson at 3-1 in the conference, 4-2 overall. In the Coastal, it's Pitt at 2-0 in the conference, 5-1 overall. Virginia is next, 3-2, 5-2, and UNC at 3-3 and 4-3, like we just discussed here a second ago. And man, it's just it is amazing to me how this season has just completely sort of turned on its head. And I don't really have any issues with that, because it's a lot of fun. But here's a couple of things that I saw this morning on Twitter that I'll share. AJ Black, one of our buds who covers Boston College, he tweeted out, in the span of 24 hours, BC Twitter has gone from, quote, Jeff Hafley is going to leave this offseason for a prime job or a primo job, to, quote, Jeff Hafley is a new Steve Adazio. And people say BC fans are different than other college football fans. So AJ is right on the mark.
I get people like AJ who run sites. Just those type of games are just rough because the apathy from getting blown out like that, it's just ridiculous. I mean, I feel for him.
Lick your wounds and move forward. Yeah. I mean, this team is growing. Hafley's a hell of a coach. You got to be very thankful you have him.
Think of it is that's still not a super talented team, but I think he's definitely doing more with less with right. That team.
Exactly. And this comes from the folks who cover Clemson rubbing the rock. They brought up this: NC State dismantling BC. They've got Miami, Louisville, FSU, Wake Forest, Syracuse, and UNC remaining. Anybody finding 2 losses there. That's the reason I brought that one up is because that speaks volumes to me about rubbing the rock guys, that they're willing to take a look outside of the Clemson picture and talk about college football, mm-hmm. and raising a question among their fans. Hey, let's think about this. What do you think? Let's talk about it. Good work there, guys. Good work on AJ's part too. He runs an awesome site. So if you are looking for something that covers Boston College, definitely check that out. We've got college basketball action that's coming up very quickly. It seems like it's almost like a freight train running us down. So I just want to remind you that the information regarding the Big Ten ACC Challenge for both the men's and women's are already posted at accnation.net. And we're putting together our preseason top 15 pick for the ACC and who we think are going to be the top teams. I noticed just briefly here, since we're running tight on time again, as always, but that you had gotten into a short Twitter conversation about how far up Notre Dame was ranked nationally. So,
well, yeah, the Ken Palm rankings came out today, Sunday, and they had Notre Dame ranked. I think it was like 26th or something like that.
I think 27th.
27th, and I'm skeptical just because this is a team that did not play any defense last year, hardly at all. And their best defender, Juwan Durham, isn't there anymore. Yeah, I know they return a lot, but on offense, but still, this was a team that a year ago was what they were 11 and 15, and going from that to top 30, I'm just skeptical. That's all.
Yeah, and reasonably so. And I will just say that from my, I'm looking over at the my initial ballot because I haven't finished it up yet. But
yeah,
I've got Notre Dame in the middle of the ACC.
Yeah, I haven't done mine yet, but I'm probably going to put them right around 7th, 8th, somewhere in there. So mid pack.
Yep, that seems appropriate. And we'll talk more about basketball in addition to football, and hopefully we'll get some folks to talk about some other sports on here as well, because we're getting into the tail end of our fall sports season. So we want to talk about where things are going there, and also looking forward to winter sports, because there's a ton of things coming up there, wrestling and you name it. I mean, this season is for the ACC is loaded. It looks great so far, and it's exciting. So it's a lot of fun to cover this, and I hope that you folks are enjoying our coverage of what's going on, because we love bringing it to you. Thanks for joining us on ACC Nation. Follow us by subscribing on your favorite podcast or streaming radio platform and on YouTube. We'd appreciate a 5-star rating while you're there. Visit our homepage at accnation.net and support us via PayPal. Keep up with the latest by following us on Google News. You can find ACC Nation on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Reddit, and Pinterest. Follow Will at Will's World MN, and I'm at ACC The Q. Cheers.
Score.